We came to Seattle to see Taylor Swift, but what we learned was there's so much more to the city than just a great concert venue. Our trip adventure started with us sleeping in our car overnight because do you stay in a hotel for only 4 hours worth of sleep? I don't think it's worth the money. Then we were on the plane early morning, ready to fly to Seattle. The Vancouver to Seattle flight seemed to only take a half an hour, and then we were in Seattle. Researching our trip, I realized that we could go from the airport to Lumen Field where Taylor was performing, and so we were able to find a hotel directly across from the airport that we could take the transit anywhere we needed to in Seattle. So that's what we decided to do, not rent a car and just travel by rail, which set the tone for our adventure for this weekend. So I Googled things to do near Seattle light rail service and found a couple articles that actually pinpointed each stop along the way and things that were within walking distance to see and do. The first one we want to check out was the public market, because who doesn't want to see flying fish? We saw a lot of fresh fish market, but did not see anything flying, and so I need to do some more research to find out where that actually was. We realized we hadn't eaten anything all morning, and this peach hit the spot. It was beautiful and delicious and messy. The flower vendors were everywhere, and we don't have that in Alberta. I should have been smart and bought a bouquet just to enjoy the weekend while we were there in Seattle. This was our first view of the harbor, and there's a lot going on. Lindley loved seeing this. This was our first time ever seeing a harbor. To get to the public market, you need to exit on the Westlake station and then walk towards the ocean. There is so much going on here. You could just spend all day looking at the vendors, seeing the gorgeous flowers, checking out the fruits and vegetables, the live fish, finding those flying fish, and then just enjoying the atmosphere. And those had to be the fattest seagulls I have ever seen in my life. We just had a lot of fun at the market, seeing and doing everything, and then we decided it was time to go down to the waterfront and to find the Ferris wheel. Now, for those with mobility issues, that is a good hike down those stairs, and then you need to go back up again. So just a forewarning on that. We checked out Pier 57 and all the fun things to see and decided that was where we were going to have dinner. If you have little kids, this would be a great place to take them to get out of the sun and the heat. Lindley always wants to do the penny souvenirs where you take a penny and smush it into a souvenir design. So she decided to do one for herself with the Pier 57 design on the front of it. And here's the finished product. It was time for dinner, and I, of course, chose seafood. Their recommendation was to try their chowder fries. Man, they were delicious, and the view from up here was so fun, watching the Ferris wheel go around as we got to enjoy our dinner in the shade, in the fresh air, and checking out some of those cruise ships in the harbor. The Toronto Blue Jays were also playing in Seattle a couple games that weekend, and so there were Blue Jays fans everywhere. We rode the rail to a few stops down and stopped at the Pioneer Square station to visit the Smith Tower Observatory. Now, it's one of Seattle's bigger tour destinations. It's got a remodeled observation floor, including gorgeous ceiling details. It talks about the Prohibition, and you still get to ride in an old-time elevator that goes up, and you get a little history lesson on the area. We love seeing Lumen Field, which is where we're going to be going tomorrow for the Taylor Swift concert. And at the conclusion of our very, very long day, I was looking forward to a hot tub because there was a pool, but there was no hot tub, so swimming was the option, and we made sure we did that before we called it a night. The next morning there was a local Denny's about a 7-minute walk away that we enjoyed for breakfast, and I found this awesome pamphlet which gave tons of Seattle attractions with QR codes, and so we decided to go check out the Burke Museum. Again, the train is what we took, and it was full of Blue Jays fans going for that Saturday afternoon Jays game. We took the train to the U station, and it was a 3-minute walk to the Burke Museum. What was great is we actually got a discounted price because we took the train to get there. The museum has working labs and collections that you can see into. It also highlights dinosaurs, fossils, Northwest native art, plant and animal collections and cultural pieces from all across the globe. We spent about 2 hours there and felt like we got to see the entire museum, although there were some places we could have spent more time with. This was the walk down to the U station, and it just had a great vibe to it. Love when I see communities like this. It was time to take the train back to our hotel so we could get all dressed up and ready for the Taylor Swift concert. Now, I have a whole video about Taylor Swift and my review of the concert, so if you want to go check that out, it was the one I just did previously. But this video is more about Seattle, so I'm just going to spend a brief moment on Taylor Swift. There were so many fans. I've never been to a concert that big, but all the cheering, screaming, jumping, dancing, and singing at the top of their lungs was unreal.
Seattle, Washington is the best crowd I have ever played for.
It was unlike anything that I've ever experienced, and you could literally feel the ground shaking beneath your feet. And my ears were still ringing after the concert. It was just amazing. The next week, there was an article in CNN saying Taylor Swift fans shake it off, causing record-breaking seismic activity during Seattle shows. My daughter said that it felt like the stadium was shaking, and I brushed it off, but apparently we had the equivalent of a 2.3 magnitude earthquake, according to seismologists. There was the same pattern of signals when you overlaid both of the concerts over top of each other. They were nearly identical. What's unique about the Taylor Swift concert was the duration of the shaking. It's much more random at a concert, and there was a rhythm controlled the behavior. The music, the speakers, the beat, and all that energy can drive it into the ground and shake it. So it wasn't in our heads, the stadium was shaking, and it was unreal. I can't wait. Taylor Swift is supposed to be coming to Toronto, and I'm definitely going to get tickets to see her there. This was an awesome night. Wrapped up at 11:30 at night, got on our train, and went home. So thankful to be on the train because the crowds were crazy getting out of the stadium. We slept in and left the hotel at 10 a.m. They watched our bags because we had another full day in Seattle to spend, and we were back on the train. We were heading back to the public market because I was gonna find those flying fish and also the gum wall. So here's your directional tips. Go into this part of the market at the corner. Then you're going to see the fish stand. Turn to your left, and there is your sign. The first time we went by it, it was blocked. Down these stairs, and there's your gum wall. It is the grossest, most fascinating piece of work of art that I have seen in a long time. It just was disgusting and yet fascinating all at once. How that can be, I don't know. We were almost to noon and hadn't had breakfast yet. And so we found this mini donut stand, and they made some delicious mini donuts. Lindley chose the maple glazed, and I went with your standard cinnamon and sugar. And then they had the most adorable sign on their tip jar, and you definitely have to tip when you know God is watching. And then we got to see the flying fish, and the crowds around this stand told you that this was the place to be, with everyone with their cameras out watching the show. I wish I lived on the ocean shore so that I could enjoy fresh fish every day. Man, I love my seafood. Then we decided to splurge and go to the Seattle Aquarium, and I am so glad that we went. I just found this fascinating. It was almost expensive as Taylor Swift tickets, especially when you convert it into Canadian funds, but it was so much fun. Come, I'll show you some of the things that I loved at the aquarium. So something you may not know about me. I love to swim and I love to snorkel. When we go on beach vacations, I'm looking for snorkeling. That's one of my top things to look for. And so this, to me, was just about as good as being in the water, except that I love to be in the water. And so I just enjoyed the coral, and the fish weren't disturbed by humans, but we got to see them up close and enjoy the beauty of the ocean creatures. There was a dome where you were surrounded by aquarium on all different sides, and we got to watch them feed the fish. There were seabirds, there were also sea mammals, and the otters putting on an adorable show for us, munching on some ice to keep themselves cool in that hot summer day. Not sure if this is a trained behavior, but he/she sat up on this ledge for a really long time, and the number of guests that got to take selfies with them, I think he's paid in fish in order to keep him in that spot for such a long time. He loved it, all the attention. I sure wish I could open and close my nose like this guy. That would be really handy when it comes to snorkeling. They were adorable. A little chunky, but I think that probably happens when you don't have tons of area to swim and you're not running away from killer whales. So they were doing great in captivity and were adorable. The only thing we missed was the show that apparently they do if you're lucky to catch them during that time. It was time for one final picture in Seattle, and then it was on to the airport to fly home. We had this little tiny plane that we took as we flew out of Seattle and got one final look at Lumen Field, where we got to see Taylor Swift this weekend. And then this happened. So Air Canada screwed up on our flight. They delayed us for a long time in Seattle, and then we had to wait on the tarmac to get into Vancouver. And so we didn't arrive here until 9 o'clock, and our flight to Calgary took off at 9 o'clock. So we arrived here at the Vancouver Airport and ran through security as fast as you possibly can through security and customs. But once we got and ran through the entire Vancouver airport to get to our gate, and by the time we got there, we still were within tickets, but they had already sold our seats, or said our seats weren't available. They'd already transferred us to the 6 o'clock flight for tomorrow. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I feel like something error in the system or with Air Canada, because we did not have flights and we did have flights, and then they were no longer there and we were bumped to 6 o'clock. And the plane was still on the tarmac, but they wouldn't let us board the plane. So you tell me what's going on. Anyways, Air Canada did not give us any compensation. Air Canada did not do anything to make it better other than give us a flight for 6 a.m. So here we are. It is 2:16 in the morning. We've been trying to sleep in the Vancouver airport. Well, it's not easy. I don't know if you've ever done it before. Not suggested. This is a 0 out of 5-star recommendation for sleeping in any type of airport. At 2 p.m., these couches became available, so that became our bed. We hopped on the flight at 6 a.m., landed in Calgary by 9 a.m., and drove home. It is time for this woman to get some sleep. I am exhausted, but it was so much fun.